The song's called Song for Charlie. Here it is.
So be proud, sweet Charlie, of the world that you made. And be proud, sweet Charlie, of the wins and the mistakes. The whole world is crying on a day that just can't be. So be proud, sweet Charlie, and save a drink up there for me.
Having a professional artist pen a song about your life would be a real honor. While for Ed and Mary Turnan, who treasure this song as a tribute to their son, Charlie, it's bittersweet.
We know that Charlie takes the occasional Xanax. I mean, we don't condone it, but we kind of know that that's on the menu for kids his age to relax and watch Netflix and maybe take a Xanax the way people might, smoke a joint back in the day. So that we were scratching our heads with like, how much Xanax would Charlie have to take to kill him? He's 6'2", 235.
Tragically, Charlie became one of the growing number of Americans who've lost their lives due to counterfeit prescription pills laced with fentanyl. Even though the CDC has sent out an alert about the doubling of drug overdose deaths linked to fake pills, many teens and young adults still aren't getting the message. That's why Charlie's parents have formed a nonprofit aimed at raising awareness and are using their platform to work with social media companies and speak publicly about their loss, including on national TV like The Today Show.
We first told the Turnan story here on Today in February.
They say they want to work with Snapchat.
After that aired, Snapchat reached out, and now they're working with the Turnan family's foundation, Song for Charlie.
On this episode of Grieving Out Loud, we'll hear Ed Turnan's urgent message to all Americans that one pill can kill. I'm Angela Kennecke. Join us as we delve into this important conversation. Ed, welcome to Grieving Out Loud. And I am so very sorry that, I guess, fate, the loss of our two children, your son 22, my daughter 21, has brought us together for this conversation. But I am so grateful to meet you.
And I'm grateful to meet you as well. Thanks for all the good work you're doing.
Well, likewise. I want to talk a little bit about Song for Charlie. I love it that you called it Song for Charlie, your nonprofit, because all the work I do at Emily's Hope, I always say it's a love song to my daughter. I don't know if that's why I want to know why you call it Song for Charlie, but I want to know about Charlie too. So we can just start off by talking about our kids.
No, that's great. Yeah, I'd love to talk to you about Charlie. And there is a story behind the name for our nonprofit. We lost Charlie when he was 22 in May of 2020. So it's been a little over 3 years for us now. And as you well know, you're a little further along in your journey, but it really doesn't get easier. It gets different, but it doesn't get easier. That's my experience. And Charlie was our youngest of three. So he has two older siblings now, almost both of them in their 30s. And so Charlie died when he was a college senior. So my wife, Mary, and I, Charlie's death was a real grenade that went off. If you can imagine, as a parent, we were 3 weeks away from having our youngest child graduate college, and we were ready for the big high five. We did it. We launched all three kids. And 3 weeks before he was due to graduate, he died from a fake pill. Now, Charlie himself, he was a great guy. We all say that about our kids. And as the third child, one of those who kind of lurked in the shadows, he wasn't necessarily always right out front. But when he did speak up, he was very witty and clever and had a great dry sense of humor. He was a real connector, very empathetic kid. The term gentle giant is overused. Charlie was like 6'2" or so, but really just a gentle, nice, kind of no drama kind of guy. He was like hassle-free. He just was not into the drama. When he sensed it coming on, he would be the one that was like, all right, come on, everybody, just chill out, right? And so just a real loving guy, tons of friends, easy to be around. That was Charlie.
But in the spring of 2020, the COVID pandemic was just beginning to unfold. 22-year-old Charlie initially spent some time with his parents at home, but he made the decision to return to his college campus for a few weeks, driven by the anticipation of embracing a new chapter in his life, one that involved college graduation and promising job prospects.
And so Charlie went back up to campus, which is about 5 hours away from where we live in Southern California, up in the Bay Area, to spend the last month of his, college career with his friends and his girlfriend, fraternity brothers, and so forth. And it was early COVID, so the campus was shut down. And when he got back up there, he was interviewing for jobs, getting ready to graduate and all that kind of stuff. And he had to sit around the house and wait for a telephone job interview one weekday. And so there weren't many of his fraternity brothers around. The regular people weren't around campus where he might have said, gotten a Xanax or something. His idea was, I'm going to chill out, play some video games, wait for this phone call I got to make. But his friend said, well, nobody's around, but I've connected with this plug on Snapchat. So they went to this guy that Charlie didn't know, never even met. He never met the guy who sold him the deadly pill. Somebody else made the exchange. But they connect with him, and Charlie says, well, if he's got perks, I'll take one of those because my back is hurting. So Charlie had back surgery a couple years earlier, so he knew what Percocet was. And then the last time anybody talked to Charlie that afternoon was around 3:00. And remember, he was supposed to make a phone call at 5:00 to have a job interview. And he didn't make that phone call. And his friends went back to check on around 7:38 at night. And they had walked by his room a couple times and seen him laying on his bed, kind of chin on his chest. They thought he was napping with the game controller in his hand, doing exactly what he said he was going to do. I'm going to kill some time, play some video games, and wait for this phone call. They did not know that he had died somewhere between 3 and 5 o'clock. So by 8 o'clock, they go and rouse him and say, come on, Charlie, we're having dinner now, get up. And he was gone. So that's how we lost Charlie. We weren't there, right? So we got the phone call. We got a knock on the door by some neighbors and then phone call from the sheriffs and hysterical kids on a college campus that Charlie's dead and we don't know why, right? It was traumatic.
That must have been so traumatizing to those young people.
Oh, yeah.
Do you keep in touch with them? I mean, have you talked to them about how all this has affected them?
We do. As a matter of fact, Mary and I were lucky enough to have dinner recently with 4 of Charlie's friends. And I know this podcast is about grief. So my experience with that was, here are 4 young men who are 25 going on 26 now. And you know what? They're out of their knucklehead college frat boy phase. And they're on to maybe their second girlfriend, maybe their second job. They're exercising, taking care of themselves, moving on with their lives. And Charlie will never do any of those things. He didn't get out of that. He made a dumb decision as a college senior during COVID going, I'm bored, I'm going to do something dumb. And it killed him. He would have gotten out of that knucklehead stage and become, just a fine young person. I'm convinced of that. But we'll never know because of the one pill problem.
Right. I know exactly how you feel because I keep in touch with some of Emily's friends since 7th grade. And I was recently at lunch with one of them, and she's grown up and a mother now. Emily would have been 26. And it just hits you like, what would my daughter have been like? What would your son have been like? And we will never know. We do not have that chance to ever see them grow into their adulthood, to have families of their own. And I think it's that loss of what could have been that is sometimes the most difficult to take.
There's so much bittersweetness in our lives now, right? Where being with these young men who I've known a couple of them since kindergarten and just so impressed with the young men they become. And yet I won't enjoy that same thing with my son. And, we have a wedding coming up. Charlie's sister's getting married. And that's very emotional, right? It's a joyful occasion for our family, but there's a big hole that there's no way to fill it. So these conflicting emotions, that's one of the things our grief therapist has said to us, that you have to start to learn how to walk through life with these conflicting emotions in your head at the same time. It's difficult.
Last week on Grieving Out Loud, we heard from a very inspirational 102-year-old doctor who talked about grief and battling those conflicting emotions. Dr. Gladys McGarry is internationally recognized as the mother of holistic medicine and is getting national attention for her book, The Well-Lived Life, a 102-year-old doctor's 6 secrets to health and happiness at every age. While Gladys says she's grateful for an amazing life, she's definitely had her fair share of hardships, including losing her daughter to cancer.
Her life was so important to me. She was such a dynamic person. She still is. I call it going down memory lane, because her presence activates me to this day. I know that Annie is still somewhere. She used to live in Glen Ellen. I could call her and talk to her. Now I can have dreams. I can actually conjure up and work towards who and what she was and realize that that is alive. No one can take that dream from me. I can see her in what I call my memory lane, as a 3-year-old trying to tie her shoelaces. And I went to try to help her, and she wangs her little ponytail and stomps her foot, and she says, "I'd rather do it mine own self." And I said, "Oh, okay," and I back off. And after a while, when she couldn't quite get it, she puts her head back and wags her ponytail again, and she says, "If you ever help me now." Now, those are real memories. I can laugh and enjoy what I had with her. I can spend my time grieving for what I didn't get as she grew into her 70s and so on. And that's very painful. I don't want to spend a lot of time doing that. I would much rather spend my time enjoying her energy and who and what she is to this day. In my mind, she's still alive. She passed through the doorway that we call death into another dimension, but she doesn't stop existing. My parents the same. They don't stop existing. That energy is still alive, and nobody can take that away from us.
While Gladys's words can be comforting, learning to live beyond the loss is definitely a challenge. Everyone processes grief and sorrow differently, and according to the National Institutes of Health, up to 1/3 of the people most directly affected by a major loss, such as the death of a spouse or a child, will suffer detrimental effects on their physical and mental health, or both. And that hole will always be there. I've heard an analogy that, beauty can grow around the hole. It's in your heart if you allow it. And I think that that is true. I think you can have two emotions at the same time. I recently heard President Joe Biden, who has suffered great personal loss in his life, say that when you get to the point where you have a thought about that person that you're missing so much and it brings a smile and then the tears come instead of the tears, because of your personal loss. I just thought, yeah, I'm getting to that point where I have a memory of Emily and it makes me smile instead of just immediately that tear jerk reaction of what I have lost.
Right. Right.
But I'm 5 years out here and it takes a long time. I mean, you don't get that in the first few years. It's just what you've lost. In coping with their profound loss, Ed and his wife have chosen to channel their grief into helping others. They established a nonprofit in memory of Charlie named Song for Charlie. The foundation is dedicated to raising awareness about the dangers of fentanyl and fake pills.
What struck Mary and I was that if I had ever heard the word fentanyl before Charlie died, I don't remember hearing it, right? And so we're a very lucky family in that it was chaos the night that Charlie died, and I didn't sleep a wink. And the next morning, we got a phone call from a law enforcement officer on the scene, and he kind of gave me the skinny. He said, "Look, you have to wait for the toxicology report, but this is fentanyl." Because we were saying, we know that Charlie takes the occasional Xanax. I mean, we don't condone it, but we kind of know that that's on the menu for kids his age to relax and watch Netflix and maybe take a Xanax the way people might, smoke a joint back in the day. So that we were scratching our heads with like, how much Xanax would Charlie have to take to kill him? He's 6'2", 235. So that didn't make any sense. And this guy the next day said, "This is not Xanax. This is fentanyl." We have what we called in the beginning that WTF moment, like, what's this fentanyl? And we start Googling and we find out A 16-year-old girl died in that county 6 months prior. There was a news article about that in the paper. There was some local newscasts about these M30s that had been found. The DEA regional website, the local medical examiner, they had warnings on their websites. And Mary and I looked at each other and said, you can put that information there for the next 20 years and Charlie and his friends will never see it. So we started Song for Charlie with the mission of taking the warning message about these fake pills directly to kids, take out the middleman and go where they are and get them directly as fast as we can. So we started partnering with the social media companies and did a whole lot of social media campaigns. And we've reached millions, tens of millions of young people over the last few years with hundreds and hundreds of millions of views of our content through our social media channels.
And Song for Charlie, the name comes from, obviously, Charlie's name. Is it what I think it is, or is it?
Back to that. It's a great story. So Charlie was, again, looked like he was probably a left tackle on the football team, but he really was into music and movies. And as the youngest of three, he had a very wide range of tastes, right? You know, his mom and I are baby boomers, so he knows everybody from Macklemore to Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, right? And he could quote lyrics and he could quote lines from his favorite movies. So he just was known as being like an encyclopedia for pop culture. So he loved that kind of stuff. And the day that Charlie died, a young man who's now on our board, his name is Jack Symes with a Y, Symes. He's a songwriter. And Charlie was his biggest fan and was so thrilled that a kid from the neighborhood who Charlie knew was like putting stuff on Spotify and he made a record. And, you know, so Charlie would go to his shows and he would bring him to his campus and be like a promoter for Jack. Well, when Jack found out that Charlie had died, he sat down that very day and wrote a song called Song for Charlie. And it's a beautiful little tune that he wrote on his guitar. And he called us the day after Charlie died and said, I can't believe this happened. Listen to what I wrote. And so a couple of months later, when we were thinking, you know, we need to warn the kids that this is happening, because we'd connected with some other families and found out we're not the only ones. And it seems like it's picking up. We decided to call the nonprofit Song for Charlie after Charlie's love for the arts and that tune that was written. Because like your nonprofit, we've kind of nicknamed ourselves Team Hope. We're in this because we think we can make a dent in it. If we just pick our lane of go warn kids and stick to that, we think we can, you know, do as much as we can as two just private citizens, a couple here who are mourning. And that's kind of what we focus on doing. And so we're hopeful that what we're doing is reaching some kids and making some difference and changing some hearts and minds. And that really helps us with our mental health and our grieving to stay in that place of hope, you know?
Right. That's one of the reasons why Emily's Hope is named Emily's Hope, is because we want to offer hope for others. You know, I don't have any more hope for my daughter's life, obviously, but I can have hope for the lives of other young people. But also, Emily was named after Emily Dickinson. And my favorite poem and her favorite poem was Hope is a Thing with Feathers. And so when I speak to kids, I talk to them about that. And it's a very famous poem. And it is a way that hope is always staying alive, no matter what happens. The little seed of hope can be there.
That's right.
Hope may be more crucial now than ever before. A record number of Americans are dying from illicit drugs, with no apparent signs of the crisis ending. According to the latest data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, more than 111,000 Americans lost their lives to drug overdoses or fentanyl poisonings over the last 12-month period ending in April. A particular concern are the counterfeit prescription pills, similar to those that claimed Charlie's life. The CDC has issued a stark alert, revealing that the number of deadly overdoses involving these deceptive pills had doubled in just 2 years. In some regions, rates even tripled.
Because of these pills that are just everywhere now, and because of the potency of the raw material of choice, which is illicit fentanyl, and the inconsistent dosing, and the mental health crisis that's going on with our youth, and the fact that they're familiar with prescription pills and tend to reach for them, they're easy. There's a new category of victim that has emerged, which are these younger kids who maybe are first, second, or third time they're out trying stuff or trying to escape or take the pain away. They get one of these hot pills, and that's all it takes.
And we are a pill culture. Kids are very comfortable taking pills. In my daughter's case, it started with pills. It started with Xanax pills, in addition to marijuana, which is now very culturally acceptable and not for the developing brain. But, it started with those things and it progressed. So you're right. It's just kids are not afraid to experiment. They think it's okay. And they think a pill is safer than something else they could do.
That's right. And one of the things that we say is, just full disclosure, I'm in recovery. I've been sober 8 years now, and Charlie has alcoholism in the family tree, is around, and we don't know how Charlie would have come to terms with substances as he moved into adulthood, right? But we'll never know because he didn't get the chance that the young people had, say, 10 years ago, where they could experiment a little bit and try some stuff and then kind of grow out of that risky behavior and say, all right, look, I prefer red wine to beer and maybe I'll smoke the occasional joint. He didn't get that chance like so many other young kids where in that earlier stage, they're taken out by one of these pills.
Right. And my daughter was only 21. And I often think 10, 20 years ago, people had a chance, to get better, to go to rehab. You don't even have that chance now.
Yeah, it's really changed. We describe it in terms of the landscape. It's kind of a term that everybody understands. We say the landscape has changed. There's been a seismic shift. When I was growing up, we would describe drug use. And what I was warned about was it was kind of like a journey or a path. And the warning you got, and I'm in my early 60s, right? So this is a long time ago, but it was, if you get off on the wrong track, you could eventually be harmed. And now that landscape, it's no longer like a path. It's more like a minefield where the first, second, or third time a kid steps out there could be their last because the drug supply is just so unknowable and volatile.
Not only is the drug supply volatile, but drug dealers are also constantly changing their tactics to reach new customers, including through social media. I want to talk to you, too, about social media responsibility for this crisis of young people dying from one pill, or one pill can kill. We've all heard that by now, but I have talked to several people. I think Laura Didier actually volunteers for Song for Charlie.
Yeah.
She lost her son by taking one pill. I've talked to Sam Chapman. That's a very famous case. Sammy Chapman in California took one pill. He was 16. I've also talked to Bridget and Tom Noring. I had the opportunity to meet Bridget and Tom Noring at a DEA Family Summit in Omaha. Their story is just one among many, as they're part of a group of families taking legal action against Snapchat's parent company. Tragically, their 19-year-old son Devin lost his life after buying what he thought was a Percocet through Snapchat, only to find out it was a deadly dose of fentanyl.
They're using the geo-tracking on Snapchat to find new customers too. We found the dealers.
Right, in their area.
So, the
right?
locator, yep. So that's how they're able to prey on these kids. And something that I think is important to bring up that's changed in the sort of way these deals take place since time we were kids is these drugs are being delivered to your doorstep. They're being delivered by kids who probably look just like your kid. They maybe went to school with them. Just because your kid's at home doesn't mean they're safe. Unfortunately, we felt like, okay, Devin's at home. It's a Friday night. What a safer place for him to be than at home with us and in his bedroom.
Right.
Unfortunately, that wasn't the case because
Right.
of the way that Snapchat and these drug dealers use the platforms like Snapchat and bring the drugs directly to your home now.
In episode 104 of Grieving Out Loud, the Norings shared how they initially tried reaching out to Snapchat's parent company in hopes of resolving their concerns before taking legal action. They felt unheard. However, Ed describes having a different experience.
We're here in Southern California where Snap is headquartered. They're not in Silicon Valley. So we had reached out to them and we ended up on the Today Show on a segment with Sam Chapman and Laura Berman about Sammy's death with Kate Snow.
This morning, we are digging into a darker side of social media. It's aimed at young people. The same place they used to connect is also where they could find just about anything for sale.
Yeah, literally. NBC senior national correspondent Kate Snow joins us with more on this one. Kate, good morning.
That was in February of 2021. And by March of 2021, we broke through and we got through the people, the executives at Snap. And we said to them, you have a problem. And we were kind of direct with them and very tough on them. And we said, your platform is being used to sell these pills. And I know that you and all social media platforms believe you have guardrails on your app to prevent drug dealing, and drug dealing is not allowed. We get that. What you don't know is the Percocets being sold on your app are not Percocets. So the idea of this counterfeiting these pills was not widely known by anyone in 2020, 21. And so they kind of took that in and came back to us within a week. And they said, we've looked across, scanned the horizon, and your little Humpty Dumpty website that you built pretty much is the only place we can find good information about these fake pills. But we're convinced this is a problem. And so will you partner with us to help us figure this out? So we've been working actively with the people at Snap since that time, say March, April of 2021. We do PSA campaigns. We had hundreds of millions of views. We participate with Shatterproof and the CDC and others in a portal that they built. So when kids search for a drug term, this heads up portal comes up, interrupts the search and comes up first. And it has information about drugs and drug use. Song for Charlie focuses on the fentanyl crisis. I serve now on their Global Safety Advisory Board, which is a group of experts from around the globe dealing with all kinds of concerns about safety and harm to children online. And I serve on that board. The two people on that board who are charged with keeping the drug issue top of mind with the executive of Snap are myself and former drug czar Jim Carroll. So we attend quarterly meetings and we're in on the progress they're making and the efforts they're taking on to make their app just as hostile as they possibly can for drug dealers. So I have a lot of opinions about what's going on with social media. And in general, I think when you want change, there are two roads you can take, and they're not necessarily mutually exclusive, right? You can coerce or you can convince. So I have been able to convince the people at Snap, and through them, they have made introductions at Meta and TikTok. And we know we have someone from Google on our board of directors, someone at YouTube on our board of directors. We have been able to convince the tech companies and the social media platforms that we need an all of internet solution. And there's stuff going on behind the scenes where they're sharing signals and data between themselves, even though they're competitors, to make it more difficult for drug dealers to exploit kids on their app. Now, the coerce side, if you want to sue them, that's fine. That's fair too. We thought we could have a quicker impact by working with them, getting their buy-in, getting them to be part of the solution and to take an assertive stance on the issue. And they've done that.
Yeah, it's so interesting because there is a lot of division even among parents who've lost kids in this way of the best way to handle it. You know, the way you've done it is to partner with the social media companies to try to spur change from within, right? And the way that they're doing it is by suing, or in some cases, I spoke to the founder of Lost Voices of Fentanyl. It's a mother from the East Coast, and we observe Fentanyl Awareness Day, but they won't observe it because of the affiliation with companies like Snap and Meta, you know, where these pills are being sold. So I think that you're right. I mean, there's no wrong way to approach it. There's different approaches. But it would be nice if everybody who has lost a child in this manner were all on the same page, right?
Yeah, right. And I don't think that'll ever happen. And if you think about it, here's why. When someone loses a child, I think the percentage of them that pick themselves up, dust themselves off and say, I want to get involved in change is maybe 20%, right? I think most people, man, they get on with their lives and they pick up the pieces and do the best they can. So that 20% who get involved are doers. They are type A. They know what they want. They know how they want to do what they're going to do. And they really don't want to take direction from anyone else. And by the way, I'm talking about myself. Okay. So, you know, I want to run Song for Charlie the way I want to run it. And I'm very confident in the position we've taken and the strategy that we're putting out there. I make it a personal policy and also an organizational policy to not criticize other groups and the paths that they have taken. Because far be it from me, my grief counselor said very early on, I said, I'm a little concerned about, you know, looking like I'm profiting on my son's death because I'm starting an organization in his name. And she said, no, stop right there. If you can find anything to give yourself a sense of purpose through this tragedy, you grab onto that, you run with it, because that's the most healing thing you can do. So I will not criticize whatever path another family takes to heal. I just won't do it. Not publicly, not privately. But at the same time, I would like to get the same kind of grace back in terms of what we're doing is having an impact. We're just doing the best we can. We're playing the cards we were dealt. We were able to get to these people, and we're running with that. And we think we're making progress.
Yeah, it can be frustrating. I've been working on this since 2019, left my full-time job in broadcasting, getting close to a year ago now, just to concentrate fully on this. And I think sometimes you can feel like you're making a big difference in what we are both doing. But other times it feels like it's never enough. And you don't really know often, too, where your message really resonated, who really got it, and who made a choice to not do something because they heard about your son's story or my daughter's story, or they heard you speak, or they got the message in whatever way it was through social media. We don't know. It's hard to quantify or qualify.
Right. I think that's why it's okay to be satisfied to do your little part. Right. So I'm not under any illusion that, and I'm not trying to position Song for Charlie as the one who's going to solve this problem. It is a hydra. It's a hydra-headed monster with lots of different aspects to it. We are trying to get through our day, right? We're wounded people. Our hearts are broken. And so we just get up every day and say what I'm doing, and everybody brings their own background to it, right? So I'm a businessman. That's my background. So I don't do a lot of political advocacy. My personal opinion is that takes a long time. What I know how to do is build teams and build companies. And that's what I'm doing. I'm building a communications company that creates and distributes informational, educational material about drug use and self-medication in the age of fentanyl and other synthetics. We take that directly to kids, and through our new initiative for parents called the New Drug Talk, Connect to Protect, we're taking it into the home. That's what I do. I get up in the morning, I put one foot in front of the other, and I do that every day. And I try to go to bed tired and get a good night's sleep. And that's about all I can handle, right? So other people, we need to change laws. The fact that I work with social media companies doesn't mean that I don't think everything's great with social media. I do not, right? And so I salute people who are trying to do internet reform. I don't have the bandwidth to do both, right? I can't go to every meeting. I can't go to every rally, just trying to get through my day. So I think people like you and I maybe can take a little comfort in saying, just doing our own little bit within what we're capable of has to be enough. And you know what? It is enough, Angela, because you've reached a lot of people. And I know people say this to you like they say it to me. You've saved lives. You may not know it, but you have, right?
You hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah, you hope so.
Yeah.
Right. So what do you think is going to make the most difference and save the most lives in this effort that we are all doing our little parts in, across the country? Those of us who have chosen to do so or who have been forced into this situation through loss. What do you think is going to end this overdose epidemic or fentanyl? I always say overdose/fentanyl poisoning epidemic. We know about 80%, what the CDC labels as overdose, is from fentanyl.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. As I got into this, I see the kind of stakeholder groups and the lanes that people go down broken up into three general areas. And again, I think like a businessman, so supply and demand, right? Supply reduction is interdiction at the border, arrest drug dealers, get it off the street once it's here, law enforcement. Demand reduction, drug prevention and education, and harm reduction, which are tactics for people who are further along in their drug journey. There are good ideas and necessary strategies in every one of those areas. Not one of them can stand tall and say, if you had all just been doing it my way all along, none of this would be happening. No, wrong. Start from a level playing field. We have not figured this out as a society yet, right? So we need the good parts of all of those three working together to address this. Now, I focus, and my organization focuses kind of in the similar space to you, because it's where I can contribute as a private citizen and have the biggest impact most quickly. And that is demand reduction through education and awareness. And so that's where we really focus is if we tell young people, and now, like I said, we have this new initiative for parents. If we tell young people and families, it's not the old drug talk, it's the new drug talk. And that is the drug supply is tainted. Things are different now. They're all chemical based because it's more profitable for the drug traffickers. And therefore, when you're out there, you're not dealing with plant-based substances whose potency is somewhat limited. You're dealing with really potent stuff of unknown dosages, and a lot of them are fake. We play up a lot of that deception in our messaging. Then we say, like, just like there's no real chicken in a nugget, there's no real Xanax on Snapchat, right? So I don't think there's any one thing that's going to end this. I think it's a combination of those three areas working together. And again, the work we do on social media and online, the way I look at it is our fellow family advocates at the grassroots level, even though we're not joined together in unison, we're driving this change. It is happening bottom up. I'm convinced of that. So what role can I play? This is the way I put it. If we stick with the war on drugs analogy, a lot of people are fighting the ground game, legislative advocacy, get laws passed, convince the government to do more of this or that or the other thing, have your rallies. That takes time. It's important work. It has to be done. I support it, right? Now, where can I help? I'm like the Air Force. I can use my connections in social media to carpet bomb the country with awareness information, right? To buy my comrades on the ground time to get the work that they need to do done. And that's, in a way, I think what we're doing complements these other family groups that way.
Right. I think we all have our roles. I think you're correct. And I always say, and I'm not going to leave dads out, but it's going to take a bunch of angry mothers and fathers to really make a change in this country and a change in how we look at substance use disorder, the drug supply, teach our children, all of it, right?
Absolutely.
So, and people scream about the border in every social media post I make. There's a post about the border. And yes, there are things we have to do concerning drugs coming across the border, but it's a much more complicated problem than that. And you have to remember that about 80% of the drugs, they're being dealt by fellow Americans. So you have Americans killing other Americans. And I keep repeating this because I want people to understand, yes, the drug cartels in Mexico are bad. They found a cheap, easy thing to use and to saturate the market with this, and they don't have our best interests at heart. And China's role in it is a whole other thing. But you have to remember, once it gets into this country, it's being dealt mostly by Americans.
And oftentimes Americans with U.S. driver's license and license plates driving south across the border and coming back, right? And the way I think about this a little bit on the global picture is when I hear things like China's killing us, the cartels are killing us, what can we do about it? Well, the first thing we could do is stop helping them, right? Because we created this self-medication escapist culture. Young kids just reach for a pill, instant gratification. The drug education has fallen off in the schools. DARE didn't work, morphed into drug education doesn't work, which is just not true. If it's done right, it's very effective. So within our own borders, there's a lot we can do to really put a dent in this. As much as we like to, we do not control policy or law enforcement in Mexico or China. We don't, and we're not going to anytime.
Exactly.
But what can I do here within our borders is my focus.
And you're right. Studies show that DARE didn't work. That's why at Emily's Hope, we've developed a new prevention education curriculum, K through 5. And we've launched that this year along with a new education website and portal, emily'shopeedu.org. And I'll put some links to that if people want to check that out. That's our little corner of the world, that we're working on. And I really think we need to get to kids at a younger age before. I always say, while their teachers and their parents have more influence on them than their peers in social media. And so we need to get that message across about how dangerous drugs are in age-appropriate ways and what they do to the brain.
And what I love about that, Angela, is you're starting so young because our focus so far has been kind of like the kids who are on social media, right? So 13 to 25, right? But it's kind of too late. And I think about another thing here that we have in our heads that there's this kind of specific dividing line between, on the one hand, like legal, therefore regulated, therefore safe medicines. And on the other side of that line, illegal, therefore unregulated, unsafe drugs. Well, two things, right? The opioid crisis and Purdue Pharma dispelled the myth that the legal stuff are not harm-free, number one. Number two, the counterfeiting of illegal substances masquerading as the safe legal ones has completely blurred that line. We need to rethink how we talk about drugs, especially to kids, especially to young kids, I love what you're doing. You teach them what is a medicine. What is it for, right? Johnny gets this because he has a cough. Sally, you don't get any because you're not sick. And when Johnny feels better, he's not going to have any more. It's that kind of cultural shift in mindset around medications, drugs, substances needs to start right where you're playing. It's super important in my mind.
Yeah. Well, I love everything you're doing as well. So thank you for that. And I wonder if you might leave us with, how Charlie plays a role in all this yet today, how Charlie stays with you in your heart as you're doing all this important work to educate young people, to get on social media, to get the messages out there.
Yeah, we feel Charlie with us every day. Mary feels it differently than I do. And to be honest, we're on a spiritual journey. I think all of us that have suffered a loss like this, one way I like to think about it is our hearts are broken, but if possible, it's better if our hearts are broken open. And so a lot of parents go through kind of a spiritual awakening with the loss of a child. We're experiencing some of that. My head is too thick for anything to get through from the other dimension, I think. But Mary will tell me all the time, Ed, you are not smart enough to do everything you're pulling off with Song for Charlie without some help from Charlie, right? And so we kind of laugh about that. We honor Charlie every day by trying to, like you, stay hopeful, because Charlie, like I said, was a no drama guy. He wasn't confrontational, and he would want us to be concerned about protecting kids and giving them some alternatives for healthier ways to cope. He would be pleased, I think, with the hopeful strategy that we've taken.
Well, thank you for everything that you're doing in Charlie's name.
Thank you, Angela. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Grieving Out Loud. You can find out more information about Song for Charlie, along with our Emily's Hope K-5 curriculum, by checking out the podcast show notes. While you're there, we'd appreciate it if you give this podcast a positive review and share it with your loved ones. It helps further our mission to increase awareness about our nation's drug epidemic and decrease the stigma surrounding substance use disorder, hopefully getting more people the help they desperately need. Thank you again for spending your valuable time with us. We'll leave you now with the Song for Charlie by Jack Symes, wishing you faith, hope, and courage.
Thick skin, chubby cheeks, the steam train on the driveway cold, forever, little brother to me. And what I do to have your heart, you saw yourself and everyone, forever. Hear you holler in the breeze, forever, little brother to me. So be proud, sweet Charlie, of the world that you made. And be proud, sweet Charlie, of the wins and the mistakes. The whole world is crying on a day that just can't be. So be proud, sweet Charlie, and save a drink up there for me. I still hear your voice, 'cause every show's a sing-along. Forever hear you screaming out a key. How's it look from up above? Did you know that you had this kind of love? Forever an angel to me. Forever little brother to me. And be proud, sweet Charlie, of the world that you made. And be proud, sweet Charlie, of the wins and the mistakes. The whole world is crying on a day that just can't be. So be proud, sweet Charlie. Wake good, sweet Charlie. And rest now, sweet Charlie. And save a drink up there for me.
This podcast is produced by Casey Wonnenberg King and Anna Phi.